Hey, what's up, everybody? BDL44 coming at you with another video. All right, so when you see something on IG, as I always do, you have to talk about it. Now, I just saw two separate clips, one from Joe Budden, the other from Gilbert Arenas, and they both were talking about how them 80s dudes, more or less the older guys, are not better than the new guys. And Gilbert Arenas brought up some really good points in regards to some of the dudes who were hurting people in the 80s not necessarily being great defensive players, because obviously if you're a great defensive player, you don't have to do all that. You're doing it within the confines of the rules. You're stopping players within the confines of the rules. You're not just clotheslining people. He was talking about the conditioning level and how they weren't in the gym 7 and 8 hours a day like some of these young players, and they would get mollywopped by a lot of these youngsters. And I don't think that's crazy. When you consider the conditioning level, etc., and the evolution of just man in general, how much faster, stronger, smarter we are now than we were in previous generations, that's just a natural evolution of man. So, of course, the game itself is going to evolve. The way we take care of our bodies is going to evolve. Just the overall understanding of what people derive from based on being able to have more data as more generations pile up more history is just too much to consider. To be as naive as to think that previous generations would just come in and destroy some of the new guys today. Now, I do understand that the new guys also don't play a tougher game, and I also agree that the most current era we're in is probably not the greatest era for any of it, because it's a lot of strange stuff going on in regards to how the game is called. Ultimately, we just feel like the game is being centered for the betterment of numbers, and has to do with other things, scores going up and things of that nature. They want having to do with some of the business deals that they're trying to take advantage of in this era. So it has nothing to do with basketball in and of itself, what we're seeing, I think, and that's the problem. Not necessarily the talent or what the conversation may have been maybe a couple years ago in regards to this. But I just thought it was kind of funny because, you know, Joe Budden, he was saying that the guys that LeBron James beat, the teams that he beat would more or less mollywop Michael Jordan and them. The teams that LeBron James had to face, the Spurs and all these great teams, Celtics from this era that he was a part of, and Detroit and all those teams, he thinks were better than some of the teams that came out in the 80s. Now, I don't know if I agree with all of that. I just think that ultimately you're looking at depth as being the centerpiece surrounding that conversation, and change in regards to the style of the games being called, as we've already said. Stuff like that has to do with it, pace and things of that nature, would ultimately really, you know, kind of determine what would happen. I think it's hard to tell. Matchups determine a lot as well. You can't really simulate certain things or circumstances. Some of the outcomes of the history that we know was altered by injuries itself and things of that nature, that, you know, a lot of stuff isn't taken into account to even decipher whether or not a team is better. Just because the outcome turned out a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that throughout the course of the pattern of how things led up to what it became, things were always as clear as they ultimately became as history would tell it. So, you know, I would say some of the times the best team didn't always win the championship certain years. That's what I'm trying to say. But nevertheless, I thought it was relevant for me and my channel, because if you guys follow me close enough, you know I talk about my prayer list. We often talk about people on this channel. It's like over 100 people at this point that I've grown to pray for, and just continue every day to try to better my own life and get closer to God in my own way. I just pick people in my life and people I don't know at random to pray for, and these two people just so happen to be on the list, Joe Budden and Gilbert Arenas. So it was like, okay, that's a sign, maybe, if nothing else, to just make some content and weigh in on the conversation. But that is the truth of the matter. And I saw both of those clips back to back, which is another kind of strange occurrence. It was like, why am I seeing these two clips back to back? But nevertheless, it's relevant. You know, I make the conversation a lot on this channel. Obviously, we talk about basketball here. That's our thing. So, you know, I've made the argument that out with the old, in with the new. That's basically what this whole channel is kind of catered around, is that mentality, and how the NBA needs to move forward in the understanding of allowing young players to have bigger roles, because the understanding of the game overall has been studied better by the younger generations. They have more outlets to study the nuances of basketball to allow them to be better pros at this level, I think, in some ways. should be able to contribute sooner, should be able to start the historical processes sooner. And that's just something that's kind of aligns with what they're talking about in some ways. But nevertheless, as we weigh what we do on this channel in regards to those two eras, particularly the 80s, I didn't even watch enough 80s basketball myself. I was born in 84, so I wouldn't know enough about the 80s to really even tell you guys about that era versus anything that we got going on right now. But what my understanding is that they played a much more physical game. Scores were lower because they were allowed to play more defense by way of how things were defended. And there were much less three-point shots going up, so the scores were altered in that way as well. You barely had three-point shots going up. It was interesting if a guy hit more than three-pointers in one game. So, you know, it wasn't expected. And that also will tell the story in regards to what it is we're looking at. So I think all of us, including myself, just need to embrace the new NBA. I don't think we're heading backwards in regards to how we're doing things. And I don't think scores are going to head back downwards even if we start playing defense differently, just because of the three-point shots being so prevalent in today's game. And the further they feel comfortable shooting it, with Dame shooting half-court threes, you can clearly see that guys are expanding their range even beyond that. And as generations go forward, you'll see even stranger normalcies in regards to efficiency and stuff like that. So as we embrace it, we also ask for a need for the side of the defense side of the ball to evolve as well, and that's what we don't want today's era to get in the way of. Let defense be a part of what it is that's being done out there, so that these guys can get the most out of themselves, and be able to be measured against the past properly, rather than having so much be worked against them in that regard. So that's what we always say here. That's pretty much the gist of the thought. My name is BDF44. Thank you all for watching. I'm out.